Welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast with your host, Alvin Bonds II. Join us each week as Alvin explores the relationship between leadership and families by interviewing leaders in different fields all over the world. Alvin believes that the success of tomorrow's leaders begins with the success of today's families.
Hello, and welcome to the Revelation of Hope podcast. I am your host, Alvin Bonds II, and welcome to episode 12. Today I interview Jacob Salem. But before I get to that interview, I'd like to talk briefly about your why. One of the things Jacob talks about in his interview is understanding your why. Actually, he talks about understanding the why behind your why. If you're in business for yourself, why? If you have started a music production company, why? Why do you do what you do? Why did you go into business? Why did you start writing your book? And then what was the reason for that? And he talks about going about 7 levels into your why to understand what it is that you're passionate about and what brought you to this particular point in your life. And he also talks about action steps. It's not only important, or it's not good enough just to understand and know your why, but what are you doing? What is the reason that you're listening to this podcast? What do you hope to discover? What do you hope to gain? And what will you do with what you gain? So it's important to understand the why behind your why, but equally it's important to know, what am I going to do? What's my action step? Jacob Salem self-identifies himself as a relentless action taker and someone who's been saved by the grace of God. Jacob is the founder and CEO of Easy Metrics. That's the letter E, the letter Z, Metrics. Jacob is also an international speaker, and he's the senior pastor of the Beaverton Church of the Nazarene in Beaverton, Michigan. When Jacob was 14 years old, he said a special prayer to God that changed his life. He prayed, "Lord, I don't know if you're real, but I know hell doesn't sound fun. So if you're real, will you come into my heart, as the preacher said, and save me from it?" That moment changed Jacob's life. And ever since then, he's dedicated his life to fulfilling his purpose that God has given him to help other people achieve their purpose as well. Jacob is also associated with the Zig Ziglar brand. In 2014, Jacob connected with Tom Ziglar and began subcontracting Ziglar's social media to his company. Jacob was able to take the Zig Ziglar Facebook page from a little over 1 million followers to over 4 million followers. Jacob also merged his company with Zig Ziglar International, and now they're one and the same. I am thankful for Jacob taking the time to allow me to interview him for this podcast. So let's listen to my interview with Jacob Salem. Thank you, Jacob, so much for joining us on this podcast. And you have your hands in a lot of different things. How would you introduce yourself to someone who didn't know you?
As an entrepreneur, I have had the privilege of building and selling 2 companies to date. And in selling the 2, I've been very, very blessed. I believe God blesses those who work. I've also aligned myself with the Zig Ziglar brand, which may have been what even got me on this podcast. The fact that I helped grow the Zig Ziglar Facebook page to over 4 million likes organically. We never bought a like or boosted a post. All of that was completely organic. And so looking at what I do now, presently, I am a top-of-funnel marketing expert. And essentially what that means is I help businesses, small and large, generate new leads, new qualified leads, so that their sales team or their team can follow up to close more sales.
Wow. That's phenomenal. How did you get started in this type of work?
So in the digital marketing space, I think it kind of came a little natural. because of twofold. I'm very technologically savvy. I love playing on computers. I've always have. I've always loved technology. I've always loved seeing new things develop, from smartphones to flip phones. Even though I was younger, I always loved diving into them. So technologically, I've always been interested in this space. When I was in school, so we'll say in high school, I always loved business. So I understood business and marketing conceptually because I liked it. And so those things both kind of came natural to me. And then when I started realizing that you could use platforms that modern day society is addicted to, like MySpace was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
Then you got Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. When I realized you could actually use those platforms for monetization, meaning you can make money in business based off of somebody else's addiction, because they're addicted to it, you can run advertising in front of them.
Yeah.
I knew it was something I wanted to learn. And so I relentlessly started learning. Okay, well, I know how to grow these pages. I learned some algorithm. We could talk about that later if you're interested to. I learned how to grow some of these Facebook platforms organically, which is great. But I wanted to learn more than that. I wanted to learn, how do you monetize? How do I actually get this person who's scrolling on Facebook looking at cat videos and people's pictures of their foods or whatever they post? I wanted to learn, how do I get that person to raise their hand to say that they're interested in a product or service that another business is offering? And so I started studying relentlessly. I started studying what all of my current competitors do over at, and I have no problem with them, digital marketer to Russell Brunson at ClickFunnels. He's not really a competitor. He's just a guy in the same space who we use the technology, to Amy Porterfield, to Ryan Dice, who is founder of Digital Marketer, to just all these different people. I wanted to learn what they were doing and how we could implement it. And so I started doing that, and then I was very privileged to be able to land Zig Ziglar as a client, and that was just kind of through prospecting and working the right angles. I reached out to Tom and essentially told him what I'm good at. And really for Tom, though, I said, I can do anything. I'll scrub your toilet. Whatever I need to do to work for the Ziglar brand is essentially how I closed that deal with that pitch of, Tom, I will literally do anything. Digital marketing, I probably really did. I was cutting the grass because he was just someone I knew I wanted to work with. So that's kind of the roundabout how I ended up in the space and learning what I learned.
On your website, describe your calling. Where did this passion come from? Where did this zeal for working, for expanding, for growing, where did they come from?
Yeah, I would almost say it's innate. It's within. Mr. Michael Newman, who is one of my good friends and one of my first ever mentors. He is a serial entrepreneur, owns a ton of companies, buys and sells companies. So he's, 10x of where I am, but where I'm trying to aspire to be. He gives a talk and he says there's three types of motivation. There's, fear motivation. So it's the do it or you're fired. That's how I would say the majority of Americans these days are motivated. Do it or you're fired, and you won't get a paycheck, and then so that's why they work and they get stuck in this trap. So they're motivated by the paycheck.
Yes.
There's also, looking at the paycheck, you can go a little further. There's the carrot type motivation, like the carrot on a stick that you dangle in front of a horse or a donkey.
Yeah.
And so they're chasing the carrot because they think if they just go further and faster and harder, they're going to get the carrot. Well, eventually that donkey might get the carrot. If they get full, they'll stop chasing it. And then there's the third type of motivation, which is kind of innate. It's inside us. And so I've just always kind of been I've always been driven. I think it's a gift that God gave me. I have no problem saying, I hope it's okay to say on your podcast that I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
I love Jesus, and I just think it was a gift He gave me that I go out there and I get it. I go after it with everything I have, no matter what it is. When I owned my first successful company with a turnkey lawn care company, I knew we had 3 crews and we were rocking and rolling, and it was going great. I knew there was not a single person out there that was going to outwork me or out-hustle me or, have better services or offer it or do a better job than me. I just knew I was always going to go forth with my very best effort. And it doesn't matter what I do, what industry I'm in. I'm always going to do my very best to be my best. And in the digital world, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an expert. I wanted to be up there where I could travel and give keynotes and come on podcasts. And I wanted to be in a place where we do live online courses, which we do, and we do automated courses, which we offer, and we do coaching and done-for-you marketing. This is just kind of a season for me. And it's been a pretty good season, and it'll be a longer season. But for me, this is the season I'm in. I just fully embrace it and give 100%, kind of fire, and then aim. And I've been very, very blessed to do it.
That's truly amazing. And having worked with the Zig Ziglar brand, you definitely understand leadership. I'm interested in knowing what's your individual philosophy of leadership.
For me, and I know you've actually referenced the fact that I've been very, very blessed to work alongside of Tom Ziglar and Evan, who's the current president, and Howard Partridge, who's the exclusive business coach, and even Michael Newman, who's played a huge role in the company growth as well. I've been privileged to work alongside them, but the first quote that actually comes to my mind is from one of Zig Ziglar's competitors currently, which is John Maxwell. And it's something along the lines of a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So as a leader, for me, it's my job to go and learn the right direction for I and anybody who's going to be underneath me to go. So it's knowing the way, knowing the steps that we need to take, which I think in order to understand the steps that a leader needs to take, they need to be willing to sit down and actually think it through.
Yeah.
And what that looks like for me is you're actually going to sit down with a pen and paper and actually think about your goals for the year. You're going to write them down. Maybe you do this quarterly or monthly. So you're writing down your goals. And then you're actually writing down the steps you need to achieve those goals. So it's knowing the way, planning the way. So know the way, go the way. So then I'm going to take the actions. So I wrote down the actions. I'm actually going to do the work. I'm not the type of boss, right? The difference between a boss and a leader. I'm not the type of person to say, hey, go do A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to sit here with my feet up.
Yeah.
I'm the one that says, this is my part. I am going to absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, go relentless 100 miles an hour at what I need to get done, because I'm showing the team, hey, here's our action plan. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I hope you guys will accomplish. And by me doing the work, I think it encourages others to do it as well. I think a leader needs to know the way, go the way, and show the way, so they're seeing what needs to be done. So that way, anybody who wants to emulate or follow in the footsteps can take the same exact steps and achieve the same success.
That's powerful. What I really appreciate about you is your humility and just recognizing that God's given you everything that you have, but you're also empowering people to use what God's given them and growing the Zig Ziglar brand's face page organically. That's phenomenal. You mentioned you've studied algorithms. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so for me, and this is giving kind of a little bit of the secret sauce, but I have no problem doing that. That for me, I have the privilege, of course. Yes, Tom Ziglar gives me full credit and says Jacob grew the Zig Ziglar Facebook page to over 4 million likes organically. And so I will take that credibility, but I need to also take a step back in the humility side that you said too, and also realize Mr. Zig Ziglar impacted 250 million people while he was alive. So, although I did 4 million, and I'll tell you the algorithm behind that, he also did a lot of the legwork before I even started. Actually, he did a little legwork before I was born. But algorithm for me, so I started taking over the Zig Ziglar account. Understanding now I'd worked with other accounts as well, from other speakers and trainers to gym owners, and now we've worked with, I think, nearly every industry, from realtors, mom and pops, big corporate CEOs, to landscape companies, lawn care companies, contractors, just about any business you could think of, your normal, standard kind of brick and mortar business.
Yeah.
But one of the things I realized very quickly, this is actually on the Zig Ziglar page that I learned this. When I took over the Zig Ziglar page, it had around 1.2 million followers, or at least that's what we believe it had. I don't think we actually took a screenshot of that, but that's what everybody says. So somewhere around 1 million followers. So it was pretty big when we took it. But I started testing kind of the algorithm. How do we grow this, and how do we grow it faster, and how do we get it bigger? And so this was just me being mathematical and paying attention to the metrics. My company's name is EZ Metrics, letter E, letter Z Metrics. And that's because everything that I've ever done in digital marketing space has to be backed up and can be backed up by metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pay very, very close attention to the metrics. So when I would post on Facebook, it has insights. If you look on a business page, you can look at the insights. And I would see, okay, well, I posted this photo at 8:17 a.m. And the photo was 1200 by 628, which would be a rectangle or whatever. And then I would be able to see, okay, well, how many people did it reach? How many people liked it? How many people engaged with it? And I started playing with photo size, with when we posted, The photo backdrop, we'll talk about that because that's pretty key to the success in anybody's Facebook strategy. The photo itself, to how much text was on the photo, and then if I didn't say it already, what time it was posted. So long story short, after all the testing, we found that if you post a square photo, and more importantly, a photo that was sized at 960 by 960 pixels, that it was going to reach more people and more people would engage with it, and it just ran better on the platform. So the first was, okay, well, obviously we know the best photo to post is going to be a square 960 by 960. So we did that. We made that adjustment, and boom, we started growing, started to reach more people. Mm-hmm. And then we started to look at the quote graphics themselves. Facebook publicly tells people when they run Facebook ads, for sure, they want your ads to have 20% text or less.
Yes.
And so we started playing with that with our quote posters on the Ziegler page. Not every company or business is going to thrive or grow because of quote posters. But for the ones that do, we use them. So we wanted to make sure that our text was 20% or less. And then we went further. So the websites are on some of our photos. And I learned that if you have the website really, really big on the photo, Facebook actually reads that photo. They see that it has a big website on the photo. The link, the URL, is in direct competition to Facebook, so they shut that down and they make that run and reach less people. And so we started making the website smaller. We started adjusting the photo size, the amount of text that was on it. And then here was the kicker, kind of in all of this that I figured out. And this wouldn't, maybe I read it somewhere, and I don't know if I was the one that completely figured it out, but Facebook has a pixel reader that is actually seeing every single photo that comes across. And my best example of this is when you post maybe a photo of you or a family member or a friend, and Facebook will put a square around that person's face.
Yes.
And try to auto tag them and say, hey, is this Fred or is this Bob or Jane or whoever? That's when we started realizing, wait, Facebook is actually seeing every single photo that comes across this thing. And when we started using brand new backdrops that we were buying and then photoshopping to look as if they had never been on Facebook before, our reach nearly doubled.
Yeah.
So when we started using brand new photos, we actually buy ours from dreamstime.com. And then we have William as our senior graphic designer. He edits them, crops them, moves them around to get them a brand new photo. So we're really paying attention to what's being posted. And the lifespan of a post on Facebook is every 4 to 6 hours. So about every 4 to 6 hours, your post on Facebook is dead. Unless it went viral, it's not going to reach any more people unless somebody else comes along and shares it. Somebody else comes in comments or likes it, but it's going to stop running on the timeline. About every 4 to 6 hours is when it will die out.
That's so interesting. For me to hear. I appreciate how much time that you invested in really looking at those, and the metrics, they speak for themselves. That's powerful. How do you find balance in all of this with your family? And I understand that you and your wife are expecting. How do you create balance in your life with business and family?
Yeah, so I love that you've done the research, and we're expecting our first child. And we have 3 dogs that count for anything, but for me, being kind of the back to the leader, the know the way, go the way, show the way, also relentless action taker, I kind of intermix all that together and I write things down. There's a lot of people that say there's not enough hours in the day, but there is 24. And so for me, and this is something that I personally make the decision to do, and I actually learned that from statement from Arnold Schwarzenegger said that if you sleep 6 hours, you've got 18 hours left. So I try to stay within that model, which means I have 18 hours in a day. And I do my very best to structure my day in advance. And so I will actually write down either the day before or maybe weeks in advance what I'm going to be doing throughout my day. And so if, obviously, as you and I both know from an earlier conversation, if things break technologically, sometimes that changes things.
Yeah.
And that may adjust my schedule. For the most part, I can actually write down my calendar, and I can write down what I'm going to be doing and when I'm going to be doing it. So if I'm at work, I am 100% at work. And if I'm at the gym, I am 100% at the gym. And if I'm at home with my wife, I am 100% at home with my wife. And it's all very intentional, well in advance and planned. And so it's essentially having a schedule, writing it down, or having goals. It's having goals, writing them down, who you want to be and what you need to do to get there. So you set down the goals and after you have your goals, then you can write down your schedule to align with your goals. And then it's just a matter of time management and sticking to the schedule that you prepare in advance.
That's so interesting. I looked at how many activities you have, how many businesses you have, and I wondered, how do you keep track? How do you balance? How do you coordinate all of that? And I see how you do it. You make a list, you write it down, you have a plan. There's so much power in writing things down, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you. Another quick tip on that too. Now we live in a day where everything is digital, and so for me, I actually do, as a millennial, I actually still write things down, whether it be on a whiteboard or a notebook. But for my calendar, this is how I truly stick to my schedule. If it goes right into my phone, and my phone reminds me of every meeting, every place I'm supposed to be, and what I'm supposed to do, it's actually become my best friend. And so many people have taken technology and it ruins their family, it ruins their relationships, it ruins their confidence, really, because they're sitting there staring at Facebook or staring at Instagram or staring wherever they're staring. For me, I've taken the technology, I've taken just one piece of it, which is a calendar, and it reminds me where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. And so there's so much technology at our fingertips to help us be successful. It's just a matter of using it.
Yeah. And I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I work with different makeups of family. And one of the things that I see the most is how much families need it. And I see the struggles and the trauma and the pain that some of the children are having to go through. I personally believe that the success of tomorrow's leaders begins with the success of today's families.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing that I'm privileged to be a part of within the Ziegler realm, which you probably have heard of, and I know Jen today, as we're recording this, just went live about it on the Zig Ziglar Facebook page, but ZiglarFamily.com is a presence that I've had the privilege of building, my team and I have built together, and that's a place where families really can get the tips and tricks they need to balance, to have that work-life balance. And I know Mark Tim with Ziegler is continuing to bring in experts who have been successful, more successful than me, that are also giving their tips and tricks. And that might be awesome, something for your listeners and for you to take a look at as well.
Yeah, I actually follow Mark Tim. And again, for me, because, personally and professionally I'm passionate about family, I love that the Ziegler brand focuses on that and empowers families. I love that.
Nice. Awesome.
Well, Jacob, what would you share with someone who wants to do what you do, wants to be an influencer, wants to effect change in the world? Where would they start? What would they need to do?
For me, I my whole life, I've been an entrepreneur, and I jokingly say this, and Alvin, I don't know if you knew this about me or not, but when I was 14 years old, I say, from the season I'm preaching now, I'll say I was a pharmacist without a license. Which essentially meant I sold marijuana at school. And I've always been in the space of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So here's another quote, and the gentleman that I'm about to quote, some people love him, some don't. So I listen to everybody and take everything with a grain of salt. But this was probably 3 years ago. I heard Ty Lopez say a statement. This was before he actually had a presence and before he was publicly an influencer. He said on one of his lives, he said, one of the biggest misconceptions in America is the statement of do what you love and the money will follow. He said, rather than do what you love and the money will follow, do what you're good at, make the money, and then use your free time to go invest and do what you love. Right? So do what you're good at, make the money, and then pay to go do what you love and enjoy it. And that was a pretty solid concept for me to comprehend. I'll own 10 companies one day. That is on my bucket list. It is on my goal sheet. That is what I want to do. My biggest piece of advice when someone comes over to me and says, hey, I either want to be a speaker or I want to be a digital marketer or I want to be whatever it is, I ask them first why. And we go 7 levels deep on that why. And I forget the gentleman I learned that strategy from. But you ask them why do they want to be whatever they want to be. And then you ask them the why behind the why behind the why. And you go down 7 levels. And then you can finally find a meaning to the degree of why they want to do what they want to do. So my biggest advice to someone is figure out what you're good at. Create that stream of income for security. And also be 2 things. A relentless action taker and a relentless researcher. One of the things I do, and I'll actually both sound it if that's okay, I always study everybody else is doing. I want to be successful, right? Whatever that term is, I think everybody should have their own definition of what successful means. But then also go learn from everybody else's mistakes. So when you're wanting to be, maybe you want to be successful in real estate, go study what other successful real estate people have done. And if you want to be in digital marketing, study very specifically what they have done. If you want to be an entrepreneur that owns 10 companies, find a mentor like I did who has done it so you can learn from them. And it doesn't matter the space. Maybe it's in the fitness industry, or maybe you want to be an author, or whatever. Maybe you want to own a daycare. I'm just trying to think of random things that someone might want to do, and then learn what you need to do to be there. For me, I'm a continual action taker and continual learner. I read, actually scratch that, I listen to a lot of books on Audible. I love listening to Audible. I say I read a lot, but typically I will finish a book or two a week on Audible because I intentionally set aside time to listen to the book. I also do it during my gym time. I mentioned earlier, when I'm at the gym, I'm 100% at the gym. Well, when I'm there, I'm also listening to a book that's going to help me be, do, and have more. Yeah. And so that's my encouragement, is figure out what your why behind your why is, what you want to do, what you want to be. And then after you figure that out, write down some action steps that you can take to start moving you in that direction.
Jacob, I just appreciate your transparency, and most people would kind of be hesitant about sharing some of the secret sauce, as you mentioned, that you shared, but I love that you willingly do that. I wonder if that has a lot to do with, your calling, what you're passionate about. No one can take that from you. No one can take your God-given gift, and I like that you constantly study to show yourself approved. So I really do thank you so much for taking the time for this interview.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege to be on, and I've had fun getting to know you a little bit over the last couple of years, and I love that you did a little research and knew that, kind of the history of what's going on in my life presently, so that actually means a lot to me as well, and I'm honored to be a part of this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob. Have a very blessed day. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, as well as providing a rating and review. Every week, I will interview a different leader and invite them to share with us their views and perspective on the relationship between leadership and family. Be sure to visit my website. It's www.alvinbonds2nd.com. That's ALVINBONDSII.com. Have a great day.